My name is Stephanie Matthews, 34 years old, and a single mom to my 7-year-old son Ethan. What started as a regular Sunday dinner at my parents' house turned into a nightmare I will never forget. I always thought family meant safety, even with the tension between my sister Natalie and me. I believed blood was thicker than water. I was so wrong. Before I tell you how my entire family turned against me that Sunday, let me know where you are watching from, and do not forget to like and subscribe if family drama hits close to home. The two-story brick house where I grew up still looks exactly the same. White picket fence that Dad repainted every spring, mom's hydrangeas blooming along the walkway, and the oak tree in the front yard where I had my first kiss with Bobby Peterson in 8th grade. Every month, Ethan and I make the 40-minute drive for these family dinners, a tradition my mother Elaine insists we maintain. Family stays connected, she always says, though her idea of connection feels more like inspection. Walking through that front door feels like stepping back in time, but not in a nostalgic way. More like being 14 again, never quite measuring up. The photos lining the entryway tell the story my parents prefer. Natalie, in her graduation gown. Natalie winning the state spelling bee. Natalie, at her teaching award ceremony. You might notice there are surprisingly few photos of me. Elaine Matthews, my 62-year-old mother, greeted us at the door with her signature partial hug. The kind that barely touches you, like she is afraid my single mom status might be contagious. Her salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, as always, not a strand out of place, much like the carefully cultivated image of our family. "Stephanie, you are 5 minutes late," she said instead of hello. Then her voice completely transformed when she turned to Ethan. "And there is my handsome grandson. Come give Grandma a proper hug." My father, Walter, 65, called out his usual greeting from his recliner eyes, glued to whatever sports game was playing. "Hey there, kiddo," he said, and I was never quite sure if he was talking to me or Ethan. Then there was Natalie, my 29-year-old sister, elementary school teacher extraordinaire, and the eternal golden child. She stood in the kitchen doorway, wineglass in hand, eyeing Ethan's sneakers on the clean floor with obvious disapproval. "Shoes off in the house, Ethan," she said before even saying hello. "Some of us care about cleanliness." I bit my tongue. Again. "Ethan, honey, remember to take your shoes off at Grandma's house." Ethan quickly kicked off his sneakers, his bright blue eyes scanning the room for approval. My sweet boy, always trying so hard to please everyone. He was wearing his favorite dinosaur t-shirt, the one with the triceratops that he insisted was the friendliest dinosaur. His sandy blonde hair needed a trim, another thing I was surely failing at, according to family standards. "I brought my drawing book, Aunt Natalie," Ethan said, pulling out his sketchpad. "Want to see the dragon I drew yesterday?" Natalie gave a tight smile. "Maybe later. I am helping Mom with dinner." After my divorce from Michael 3 years ago, I had thrown myself into being the best single parent I could be, working full-time as a speech therapist at a local clinic, making it to every school event, and still managing to help Ethan with his reading every night. It was exhausting, but worth it to see him thriving, despite the absence of his father, who had moved to Seattle with his new girlfriend, and only called on birthdays and Christmas. Meanwhile, Natalie lived the perfect childless life in her immaculate condo downtown. She taught 3rd grade, and was adored by students and parents alike. My mother never failed to remind me how Natalie had done things in the right order, unlike me, who had gotten pregnant right after college, and married Michael, in what my mother called a predictable shotgun wedding. "Stephanie, could you at least have brushed Ethan's hair before coming over?" my mother whispered as we moved to the kitchen. "What will the neighbors think if they see him looking so unkempt?" The neighbors. Always the neighbors. As if Mrs. Peterson next door was the ultimate judge of our family worth. "He took a bath right before we came, Mom. He is 7, not attending a business meeting." "Well, when you were 7, I made sure you and your sister always looked presentable in public." There it was, the comparison that never ended. The kitchen smelled amazing despite the tension. Lasagna, Natalie's favorite, Never Ethan's preferred mac and cheese or my chicken parmesan. The dining table was set with the good china, another unspoken rule of these monthly dinners. Act like we are the perfect family, even if we are crumbling beneath the polished surface. "Did Natalie tell you about her summer plans?" Mom asked, as she handed me plates to carry. "She is going to Europe for 3 weeks. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, all by herself. So brave and independent." The subtext was clear. Unlike you tied down with a child at such a young age. These dinners followed an unspoken script. Mom would praise Natalie. Natalie would humble brag about her achievements. Dad would stay silent, and I would try to highlight Ethan's small victories, only to have them diminished by comparisons to Natalie at his age. "Ethan got an A on his science project," I would say. "Well, Natalie was reading at a 6th grade level when she was 7," Mom would counter. I kept coming to these dinners because I believed Ethan needed family connections. He needed to know his grandparents and his aunt, even if they made me feel like I was constantly failing. I wanted him to have what I never did growing up, a sense of belonging. I was beginning to wonder if that was possible in this house. "Dinner is served," my mother announced proudly, placing the steaming lasagna in the center of the table. The cheese bubbled on top, and the rich aroma of tomato sauce and herbs filled the dining room. It was Natalie's recipe, of course, one she had perfected during a cooking class she took last fall. "It looks delicious, Mom," I said, genuinely appreciating the effort despite everything else. Natalie helped with the sauce, Mom added, as if I had not given sufficient praise. "She has such a natural talent in the kitchen." Ethan climbed into his chair, his eyes wide at the sight of the garlic bread basket. "Can I have 2 pieces, Grandma?" he asked politely. "Just 1 for now," I said gently. "Let us make sure everyone gets some first." "Oh, let him have 2, Natalie interjected. "It is not like he will listen to you anyway." I felt the familiar sting of her words, but maintained my smile for Ethan's sake. This was her pattern, subtly undermining my parenting while pretending to be the fun, indulgent aunt. As we ate, Mom steered the conversation toward Natalie's achievements as usual. "Tell Stephanie about the principal's commendation you received, Natalie." Natalie dabbed her mouth with her napkin, taking her time before responding. "It was nothing really, just a recognition for the reading program I developed. My students' test scores were the highest in the district." "That is wonderful," I said sincerely. Despite our issues, I never doubted she was an excellent teacher. "And tell them about your Europe trip," Mom prompted, beaming with pride. 3 weeks, 5 countries, Natalie said, swirling her wine. "Starting in London then, Paris, Barcelona, Rome, and finishing in Athens. One of the benefits of being childless is the freedom to just pick up and go wherever, whenever." She glanced at me as she said this, the implication clear. I chose wrong. She chose right. "Will you bring me something, Aunt Natalie?" Ethan asked innocently. "Of course, buddy. Maybe a little Eiffel Tower for your room." Dad finally spoke up from his end of the table. "Pass the bread, will you?" His contribution to the conversation complete, he returned to silence. As dinner progressed, Ethan grew increasingly fidgety, a normal behavior for a 7-year-old boy who had been sitting at a formal dinner table for over 30 minutes. He had been so good using his napkin and saying please and thank you without prompting. "Ethan, would you like some grape juice?" Mom offered already, pouring it into one of her crystal glasses before I could object. "Mom, maybe use a regular cup. Those glasses are pretty fragile," I suggested carefully. "Nonsense. He needs to learn how to handle nice things." She dismissed my concern with a wave. Natalie was using proper glasses at 5. "Thanks, Grandma," Ethan said carefully, taking the glass with both hands. Natalie eyed him suspiciously. "Be careful with that. Those are crystal, not plastic sippy cups." "He knows, Natalie," I said, feeling defensive. "He is 7, not 2. "Well, with your permissive parenting style, it is hard to tell sometimes," she muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. Mom nodded in agreement. "Children need structure, Stephanie. Back in our day, children had consequences for misbehavior. They learned respect. Times change, Mom. Research shows positive reinforcement works better than punishment, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. And that is why this generation is so entitled, Natalie added. No discipline. Dad grunted in agreement from his end of the table, his eyes still fixed on the football game visible from his seat. I noticed Ethan growing uncomfortable with the tension, his little shoulders hunching as he concentrated extra hard on eating properly. He was trying so hard to be good to meet their impossible standards. "Can I have dessert now?" he asked when he finished his last bite of lasagna. "What do we say?" I prompted gently. "Please, may I have dessert now?" Mom smiled approvingly. "At least you have taught him manners. Yes, there is chocolate cake in the kitchen." As Mom went to get the cake, Ethan reached for his juice, his excitement, making him less careful. His small hand bumped the crystal glass, and in slow motion, I watched as the dark purple liquid spilled across the white tablecloth and splashed onto Natalie's cream-colored blouse. The silence that followed felt eternal. "Oh my God!" Natalie jumped up, the purple stain spreading across her chest. "This is brand new. It cost $150. Ethan's eyes went wide with fear. "I am sorry, Aunt Natalie. I did not mean to." I immediately grabbed my napkin and stood up. "It was an accident, Natalie. Here, let me help you blot it before it sets." "Keep your hands off me," Natalie snapped, backing away. "This is exactly what happens when you do not teach kids proper discipline." Mom returned with the cake, took one look at the situation, and set the dessert down with a heavy sigh. "Oh, Ethan," she said, disappointment dripping from her voice. But then, I caught something else in her expression, as she glanced at Natalie, something that made my stomach twist. It was almost like satisfaction. As if this incident proved every point they had been making about my parenting. "I can wash it right now," I offered. "If we treat it quickly, it might not stain." Natalie's face flushed with anger, and I could see she was about to explode. This was more than about a blouse. This was years of resentment, finding an outlet. "I will get the stain remover," I said quickly, trying to diffuse the situation, as Ethan's lower lip began to tremble. "You little brat!" Natalie's voice cut through the room like a knife as I returned with the stain remover. She was standing over Ethan, who had shrunk back in his chair, tears welling in his eyes. "Natalie." I rushed forward, positioning myself between her and my son. "It was an accident. He did not do it on purpose." This is what happens when children are not taught consequences. "Stephanie." She seethed, ignoring my outstretched hand with the stain remover. "He is completely undisciplined, running wild like some animal." My mother stood by, nodding along with Natalie's tirade. "We warned you about being too soft with him, Stephanie. Children need firm boundaries." Ethan slid off his chair and tugged at my shirt. "I am really sorry, Mommy. I can help clean it." His voice was small, trembling with the effort not to cry. "It is okay, sweetie," I reassured him, squeezing his shoulder. "Accidents happen." "Accidents happen," Natalie mimicked in a high-pitched voice. "That is your answer for everything, is it not? No wonder he thinks he can get away with anything." She brushed past us, deliberately bumping my shoulder as she stormed toward the stairs. "This blouse is ruined. Absolutely ruined." "Natalie, please," I called after her. "Let us just talk about this calmly." "Calmly. Like you talk to Ethan when he misbehaves. No consequences. Just accidents happen." She disappeared upstairs, the sound of a door slamming echoing through the house. My father finally looked up from the television. "You should control your boy better, Stephanie," he said, before returning his attention to the game. I felt my blood beginning to boil, but took a deep breath. Fighting with them would only make things worse for Ethan, who was now trying to wipe the tablecloth with his napkin, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. "Ethan, it is okay," I said softly, kneeling beside him. "Why do not you go into the living room and take out your drawing book? I will talk to Aunt Natalie." "She hates me," he whispered, his blue eyes wide with hurt. No, sweetie. She is just upset about her blouse. She does not hate you. I wiped his tears with my thumb. Go on now. I will fix this. As Ethan trudged to the living room, shoulders slumped in defeat, my mother clicked her tongue disapprovingly. You coddle him too much, Stephanie. When you girls were growing up, spilling something at the dinner table would have meant serious consequences. He is 7 years old, Mom. It was an accident. He feels bad enough without us making him feel worse. And that is why he will never learn, she replied, gathering the soiled napkins. You are raising him to be weak. I bit back a retort and headed upstairs to find Natalie. As I passed my parents' bedroom, something caught my eye. My father's old leather belt was hanging on the back of the door, the same belt he had used to discipline Natalie and me when we were children. I paused, memories flooding back. The sound it made cutting through the air, the sting that lasted for hours, the humiliation worse than the pain. I had sworn when Ethan was born that I would never use physical punishment, that I would break the cycle. My hand unconsciously moved to my lower back, where a particularly harsh lesson had left a welt that took weeks to heal. I was 9, Ethan's age, and had accidentally broken my mother's favorite vase while playing indoors on a rainy day. The memory was so vivid that for a moment I was lost in it until a sound snapped me back to the present, a sound that made my blood run cold. The sharp crack of leather against skin. Then my son's scream. Mommy. I have never moved so fast in my life. I flew down the stairs, nearly tripping in my haste, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. What I saw in the living room would haunt me forever. Ethan was cowering in the corner of the living room, his small body curled into a protective ball. His dinosaur t-shirt had ridden up, exposing his lower back and the angry red welt forming there. Natalie stood over him, my father's belt gripped tightly in her hand, raised for another strike. What are you doing? I screamed, lunging forward. The belt came down again, catching Ethan across his legs before I could reach them. His shriek pierced my heart like a physical pain. This is how you teach respect, Natalie shouted, her face contorted with a rage I had never seen before. This is what he needs. I grabbed the belt mid-swing, yanking it from her grasp with such force that she stumbled backward. Get away from my son, I screamed, throwing the belt across the room. I scooped Ethan into my arms, his body trembling against mine, as he sobbed uncontrollably. It is okay, baby. It is okay. Mommy's here, I whispered, though nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. Only then did I notice my mother standing in the doorway watching. She had not intervened. She had not tried to stop it. Instead, there was a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. He needed that, she said calmly. Sometimes a good spanking is the only thing that gets through to children. A spanking? I was incredulous. She was whipping him with a belt. He is 7 years old. My father remained in his recliner just feet away from where his grandson had been assaulted. He had not moved, had not even turned down the volume on the television. Let me see, sweetie, I said gently, trying to examine Ethan's legs. 2 angry welts were forming, one across his calves and another on his lower back where his shirt had risen up. My vision blurred with tears of rage and horror. How dare you? I said, my voice dangerously quiet as I turned to face my sister. How dare you touch my child? Natalie crossed her arms, defiant. Someone had to discipline him. You certainly were not going to do it. It was just a couple of swats with the belt. We got much worse at his age, and we turned out fine. Fine. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You think this is fine? Beating a child? You think we turned out fine? Do not be so dramatic, Stephanie, my mother interjected, stepping further into the room. It was hardly a beating. When you girls were growing up. I know exactly what happened when we were growing up, Mother. And I swore I would never continue that cycle of abuse with my son. Abuse. My mother's eyes widened in indignation. How dare you use that word in this house? We disciplined you girls because we loved you. That was not love, I said, standing up with Ethan still clinging to me. And this is not love either. We are leaving. Now. I grabbed Ethan's backpack from the couch, my hands shaking with adrenaline and fury. You are overreacting, Natalie said, rolling her eyes. It was just a belt, and he ruined my blouse. A blouse. You assaulted my child over a blouse. I felt something break inside me, some final thread of familial loyalty snapping. You are a teacher, Natalie. You work with children every day. What would your principal think of this? Something flickered in Natalie's eyes. Fear, maybe? The realization of what she had done, of what it could mean for her career. You would not dare, she whispered. I pulled out my phone, my decision made in that moment. I am calling the police. My mother moved with surprising speed for a woman in her 60s, snatching the phone from my hand. Do not you dare call the police on your own sister. It will ruin her life, her career. Over what? A little discipline. Give me my phone, Mom. I held out my hand, trying to keep my voice steady for Ethan's sake. She clutched my phone to her chest, shaking her head. I will not let you destroy this family over your overprotective nonsense. My father finally spoke, his voice cutting through the tension. Your mother is right, Stephanie. You are raising a spoiled brat. You should be thanking your sister for trying to instill some discipline. I stared at him. This man who had never protected me, who was now failing to protect his grandson, thanking her for assaulting my child. My mother laughed, a cold, dismissive sound that chilled me. It was just a belt, Stephanie. Stop being so dramatic. In that moment, I saw my family clearly for perhaps the first time. The dysfunction, the cruelty masked as discipline, the cycle of abuse that would continue unless someone had the courage to break it. That someone would be me. Ethan and I are leaving, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. And do not think this is over. What does that mean? My mother's voice held a note of uncertainty now. It means I am done protecting the people who hurt us. It means there are consequences for adults too, not just children. I carried Ethan to the door, his face buried in my neck, his tears soaking my collar. If you walk out that door and cause trouble for your sister, do not bother coming back, my father called after me. I paused at the threshold, turning to look at these three people who called themselves my family. I would not dream of it. As I strapped a still sobbing Ethan into his car seat, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely manage the buckle. My phone was still inside with my mother, but at that moment all that mattered was getting my son to safety. It hurts, Mommy, he whimpered, trying not to touch his back against the seat. I know, baby. We are going to get you help. I kissed his forehead, my tears falling onto his cheeks. I am so sorry this happened, so sorry I did not protect you. As I pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of my mother and Natalie watching from the window. They had no idea what I would do next. No idea at all. The emergency room at Memorial Hospital was mercifully quiet for a Sunday evening. I carried Ethan inside his arms locked around my neck, his sobs having subsided into occasional hiccups and sniffles. The fluorescent lights seemed too harsh, too exposing, and for a brief moment, I hesitated. Was I overreacting? Was this really necessary? Then Ethan whimpered, as my hand accidentally brushed against one of his welts, and any doubt vanished. This was not just family drama. This was abuse. The triage nurse, Kimberly, according to her name tag, took one look at Ethan's tear-stained face and my own wild expression and ushered us immediately into an examination room. What happened? She asked, gently helping me settle Ethan onto the examination table. My sister, my voice cracked. She hit him with a belt. For spilling juice. Kimberly's professional demeanor did not slip, but I saw something harden in her eyes. I need to document his injuries. Is that okay? I nodded, helping Ethan remove his t-shirt. The red welts stood out starkly against his pale skin, one across his lower back and two on his legs. Kimberly took photographs, her movements, efficient but gentle. These are the worst ones, I said, pointing. But she hit him at least 3 times before I could stop her. Dr. Thomas will be in shortly, Kimberly said, giving my shoulder a supportive squeeze. You did the right thing bringing him in. Dr. Thomas was a middle-aged man, with kind eyes and a calm manner that seemed to immediately put Ethan at ease. He examined the welts carefully, asked Ethan some gentle questions about what happened, and then asked if he could speak with me privately. Kimberly offered to show Ethan the secret drawer of stickers and toys they kept for brave patients, and he reluctantly agreed to go with her. Mrs. Matthews, Dr. Thomas began once we were alone. Miss, I corrected automatically. I am divorced. Miss Matthews, he amended. What I am seeing are clear signs of child abuse. The law requires me to report this to both the police and Child Protective Services. My heart raced. I understand. That is why I brought him here. I want to press charges against my sister. She is an elementary school teacher. I added the significance of this fact hanging in the air between us. Dr. Thomas nodded gravely. Officer Michael has been called and will be here shortly to take your statement. In the meantime, I am prescribing a mild pain reliever for Ethan and a topical cream for the welts. Officer Michael arrived while Ethan was still with Kimberly, collecting what seemed like one of every sticker in their collection. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a notebook and a serious expression that softened when I explained what had happened. You did the right thing coming here, he assured me, echoing Kimberly's words. Many people would try to keep this kind of thing in the family. That is exactly what my mother wanted, I said bitterly. She took my phone to prevent me from calling the police. She said I would ruin my sister's life. Your sister made her own choices, Officer Michael said firmly, and there are consequences for those choices. As I gave my statement detailing everything that had happened, I felt simultaneously powerful and terrified. This was really happening. I was reporting my own sister for child abuse. I was breaking the family code of silence that had protected generations of discipline that crossed the line into abuse. We will need to interview your son as well, Officer Michael explained. But not tonight. He has been through enough. I can schedule a time for him to speak with a specialist trained in interviewing children. Just as Officer Michael was preparing to leave, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered anyway, thinking it might be important. Stephanie. It is Mom. I am using Dad's phone. Her voice was tense, controlled. Where are you? When are you coming back? I am at the hospital, Mom. With Ethan, getting his injuries documented. There was a long silence. Then, you are making a terrible mistake. Natalie is beside herself. She says she barely touched him. There are welts, Mom. Actual welts on his body. Children bruise easily, she dismissed. You need to bring Ethan home now, and we can discuss this as a family. There is nothing to discuss. Natalie assaulted my son. Do not be ridiculous. It was discipline, not assault. If you pursue this, you will destroy your sister's career. Is that what you want? To ruin her life over a moment of poor judgment? I looked at Officer Michael, who could clearly hear my mother's raised voice through the phone. He gave me an encouraging nod. What I want, I said clearly, is for my son to be safe. What I want is for Natalie to face consequences for hurting a child. What I want is to break this cycle of abuse that our family calls discipline. If you do this, my mother's voice dropped to a threatening whisper, you are no longer my daughter. Do you understand me? You will be dead to this family. The words stung, but less than I would have expected. I understand perfectly, Mom. Goodbye. I hung up my hands, surprisingly steady now. Family pressure can be intense in these situations, Officer Michael said kindly, but you are doing what needs to be done. After Officer Michael left promising to be in touch soon, I called the only friend I knew I could count on. Lauren had been my roommate in college and had stuck by me through my pregnancy, my hasty marriage, and my eventual divorce. I need help, I said when she answered. Something terrible has happened. Lauren listened without interrupting as I explained everything. When I finished, her response was immediate and certain. "Bring Ethan to my place. You both can stay as long as you need to. And I am calling my cousin Diane. She is a family lawyer." "I cannot afford a lawyer, Lauren." "Let me worry about that. Just get Ethan somewhere safe tonight. We will figure out the rest tomorrow." For the first time since I had heard Ethan scream, I felt like I could breathe again. We were not alone in this. 2 days later, I sat across from Diane Miller in her downtown law office. She was a sharp-featured woman with reading glasses perched on her nose and a no-nonsense attitude that I found immensely reassuring. "Based on the medical report and the police statement, we have a strong case," Diane explained. "The district attorney is considering charges against your sister for child abuse. Given her position as an elementary school teacher, they are taking this very seriously." "What about my parents?" I asked. "They did not stop it. My mom even prevented me from calling the police. We can pursue a restraining order against all of them if you feel that is necessary for Ethan's safety, and given their reaction, I would recommend it." "Will Ethan have to testify? I do not want to put him through that." "It is unlikely. The medical evidence and your testimony should be sufficient, but Ethan will need to speak with a child psychologist, not just for the case, but for his own healing." I nodded, thinking of how quiet Ethan had been since the incident, how he flinched at sudden movements, how he had asked in a small voice if we would ever have to go back to Grandma and Grandpa's house again. "I want to move," I said suddenly. "Somewhere. They cannot just show up. Somewhere Ethan can feel safe again." Diane nodded understandingly. "That might be wise. I can help you file for an emergency restraining order today. That will give you legal protection while you look for a new place." As I signed the paperwork for the restraining order, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. Grief for the family I had always wanted, but never truly had. Relief that I was finally taking concrete steps to protect my son and break free from the cycle of abuse that had been normalized in my family for generations. "You are doing the right thing," Diane assured me, as if reading my thoughts. "It takes courage to stand up to family, especially when they are in the wrong." Courage. Was that what this was? It felt more like desperation, like the fierce primal instinct to protect my child at all costs. But maybe that was courage after all. 2 weeks after what Ethan and I had come to call the bad Sunday, I received a voicemail from the principal of Westlake Elementary, where Natalie taught 3rd grade. She had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The criminal charges were moving forward, and the school district had no choice but to take action. The floodgates opened after that. Calls and texts from relatives, from my parents' friends, from people I had not spoken to in years. All of them, with the same message: I had gone too far. I was destroying my sister's life. I needed to drop the charges and handle this within the family. "You always were jealous of your sister," my Aunt Brenda hissed in one particularly venomous voicemail. "This is just your way of getting back at her for being more successful than you." I deleted the messages without responding. Lauren had helped me find a month-to-month rental in a secure apartment building across town, and Ethan and I had moved in with little more than our clothes and his favorite toys. The rest could wait. Ethan had started seeing Dr. Sophia, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. She used play therapy to help him process what had happened, and slowly, I started to see glimpses of my happy, carefree boy returning. He still had nightmares sometimes, still asked questions I struggled to answer. "Why did Aunt Natalie hurt me, Mommy? Is Grandma mad at me? Are we ever going to see them again?" I answered as honestly as I could, in terms he could understand. "Aunt Natalie was wrong to hurt you. It was not your fault. Grandma and Grandpa need to learn that hurting children is never okay. We will not see them until they understand that, and can keep you safe." 3 weeks after the incident, Diane called to inform me that a meeting had been scheduled at her office. My parents and Natalie had requested to speak with me with Diane present as my advocate. Ethan would stay with Lauren. You do not have to do this, Diane reminded me. But sometimes these conversations can be productive in moving toward resolution. Resolution. The word felt hollow. What resolution could there be for what they had done? Still, some part of me needed to face them, to say my piece, without their interruptions or manipulations. The conference room at Diane's office felt too small once we were all inside. My mother looked older somehow, the lines around her mouth deeper than I remembered. My father sat stiffly beside her, his expression unreadable. Natalie was last to enter, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Diane began formally. My client has consented to this conversation in hopes of moving toward a resolution that prioritizes Ethan's well-being and safety. This has gone far enough, my mother said, immediately ignoring Diane completely. Stephanie, you need to drop these ridiculous charges. Your sister is about to lose everything over one mistake. One mistake, I repeated, my voice steadier than I expected. She took a belt to my 7-year-old son for spilling juice. You watched it happen. Dad sat there and did nothing. And then, you tried to prevent me from getting help. It was discipline, my father insisted. The same discipline we used with you girls. And you turned out fine. Did we? I challenged him. Did we really turn out fine, Dad? Because from where I am sitting, one of your daughters just assaulted a child, and the other spent 34 years thinking that kind of abuse was normal until she saw it happening to her own son. No one is saying what Natalie did was right, my mother interjected. She overreacted. She knows that. Does she? I turned to Natalie, really looking at her for the first time. Do you understand what you did? Natalie's lower lip trembled. I lost my temper. I am sorry. But you are destroying my career, my whole life, over one mistake. Your career? I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. You beat a child with a belt, Natalie. A child in your care. You are a teacher. How many other children have you disciplined when you lost your temper? That is not fair, she cried. I would never do that at school. But you did it to your nephew. In what world is that okay? I grew up thinking it was normal, she said quietly, just like you did. And there it was, the heart of it all. The cycle of abuse passed down through generations, normalized and justified as discipline or tough love. That is why I am doing this, I said, my voice softening slightly, because it was normal in our family, because no one ever stood up and said, this stops here. Well, I am saying it now. This stops with me. This stops with Ethan. My mother scoffed. So you will tear this family apart over a few welts that have probably already healed. I turned to her, really seeing her for perhaps the first time. Not as my mother, not as an authority figure I had spent my life trying to please, but as a woman who had perpetuated harm and called it love. The welts will heal, Mom. The trust will not. Not without real change. Not without all of you acknowledging what happened was wrong. Not just a mistake or an overreaction, but fundamentally wrong. What do you want from us? My father asked, his voice gruff with emotion. I rarely heard from him. I want you to get help. All of you. I want you to understand why what happened was abuse, not discipline. I want you to learn other ways to interact with children. And until you do, you will not see Ethan again. You cannot keep our grandson from us, my mother said. But there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice now. Actually, she can, Diane interjected smoothly. The court has already granted a temporary restraining order. Given the circumstances, we would have no difficulty making it permanent. This is not what I want, I said honestly. I want Ethan to have grandparents who love and protect him. I want him to have an aunt who respects his boundaries. But right now, none of you are safe for him to be around. Natalie was openly crying now. What can I do, please, Stephanie? Tell me what I can do to make this right. I looked at my sister. This person I had both loved and resented my entire life. and felt an unexpected pang of compassion. She was a product of the same dysfunctional family I was. The difference was, I had chosen to break the cycle. She had not, at least not yet. Get therapy, Natalie. Real therapy. Anger management. Parenting classes. Show me you understand why what you did was wrong and that you are committed to changing. It will not happen overnight. It will not be easy, but it is the only way forward. And the charges my father pressed. The charges stand, I said firmly. There are consequences for hurting a child. That is something all of you need to understand. As the meeting concluded, my mother refused to look at me. My father shook his head in disappointment. But Natalie lingered, catching my eye as I gathered my things. I really am sorry, she whispered. I never meant to hurt him so badly. I know, I said, and I did. But intent does not erase impact. Ethan is still having nightmares. He still flinches when someone raises their voice. Those are the real consequences of what happened. Can I write to him? Just to apologize. I considered this. You can write a letter. I will read it first. If I think it is appropriate, I will share it with him when he is ready. It was a small opening, the tiniest crack in a door that had seemed permanently closed. But it was something. A beginning, perhaps. As I walked out of the office, I felt lighter somehow. Not because anything had been resolved, not because the pain had lessened, but because for the first time in my life, I had stood my ground with my family. I had put my son's well-being above their approval. I had chosen to break the cycle no matter the cost. And despite everything that felt like victory, 6 months have passed since that Sunday dinner that changed everything. Ethan and I have settled into our new apartment, a bright 2-bedroom, with a small balcony where we grow tomatoes and basil in pots. It is not fancy, but it is ours, and most importantly, it is safe. Ethan has thrived in his new school. His teacher, Mrs. Gabriella, sent home a note last week praising his creativity and kindness toward other students. He has made new friends, particularly a boy named Leo, who lives in our building and shares Ethan's love of dinosaurs and superhero comics. I received a promotion at the speech therapy clinic, where I work taking on more complex cases and mentoring a new therapist fresh out of graduate school. The additional income has made our lives more comfortable, allowing for small luxuries like swimming lessons for Ethan and occasionally ordering takeout on Friday nights, our special movie and pizza tradition. Life has found a new rhythm different from before, but increasingly comfortable. We have built a chosen family of friends who support us and understand what we have been through without judgment. The legal proceedings against Natalie concluded with a plea agreement. She accepted responsibility for child abuse, received probation, and is required to complete extensive therapy and parenting education classes. Her teaching license was suspended, though not permanently revoked. She has been working at a bookstore, and according to her therapist who updates Diane with Natalie's permission, making significant progress in understanding the roots of her behavior. My parents remain distant. My father has not spoken to me since the meeting in Diane's office. My mother calls occasionally, our conversations brief and superficial. She still cannot acknowledge the harm that was done, still believes I overreacted. I have accepted that some relationships cannot be healed, at least not without fundamental change that some people are unwilling or unable to make. Last Tuesday, I was shopping at the grocery store, comparing prices on breakfast cereals when I heard a familiar voice. Stefania. I turned to find Natalie standing there, a shopping basket over her arm, her hair shorter than I remembered. She looked different, somehow less polished but more real. Hi, I said, my pulse quickening. We had not seen each other since the meeting in Diane's office. How are you? She asked, shifting uncomfortably from one foot to the other. How is Ethan? We are doing well, I said cautiously. Ethan is enjoying his new school. She nodded, eyes downcast. I have been wanting to tell you something, but I did not want to push. I just want you to know that I understand now. What I did was inexcusable, It was abuse, not discipline. I have been working with my therapist to understand why I reacted that way, and how to make sure I never do anything like that again. I studied her face looking for signs of the old Natalie, the performative perfection, the underlying resentment. Instead, I saw something new. Humility, perhaps. Genuine regret. "That is good to hear," I said finally. "It matters that you understand." "I wrote another letter for Ethan," she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. "If you think he is ready, no pressure if he is not." I took the envelope, noting the careful printing of Ethan's name. "I will read it first," I warned her. Of course she agreed quickly. "And if you think it is okay, maybe someday, when he is ready. Maybe I could see him, with supervision, of course. However you would feel comfortable." The old me would have agreed immediately, eager to smooth things over, to please, to pretend everything was fine. The new me considered carefully. "That is not up to me," I said finally. "It is up to Ethan. When and if he wants to see you, we can discuss what that might look like, but it would be entirely on his terms." Natalie nodded, accepting this boundary without argument, another change from before. "I understand. Thank you for even considering it." As we parted ways, I felt neither the sharp pain of before, nor a false sense of resolution. Instead, there was a quiet acknowledgement that healing is not linear, that some relationships can be cautiously rebuilt, while others may need to remain distant, and that protecting my son's sense of safety would always be my priority. My mother still refuses to see her role in what happened. My last conversation with her ended with her familiar refrain. "You always were too sensitive, Stephanie. Always making mountains out of molehills." I no longer argue with her, or try to make her understand. I have accepted that some people cannot or will not change, and that my energy is better spent on those who can, including myself. The letter Natalie wrote to Ethan was genuinely remorseful, age-appropriate, and free of excuses. I shared it with Dr. Sophia first, who agreed it might be healing for Ethan to read it when he felt ready. "Aunt Natalie wrote you a letter," I told him one evening after dinner. "Would you like to read it?" He considered this seriously, his small face solemn. "Maybe tomorrow," he said finally. "Not today." "That is perfectly fine," I assured him. "There is no rush. It is entirely your choice." And that perhaps has been the most profound lesson in all of this. Choice. The power to choose safety over obligation. The power to set boundaries, even with family. The power to break cycles of harm that have persisted for generations. Healing has come in unexpected ways. Through the support of friends who became family. Through therapy both for Ethan and for me. Through the quiet joy of ordinary days unshadowed by fear or tension. Through the knowledge that I did what was necessary to protect my child, no matter how difficult. I look at Ethan, now building a Lego spaceship on the living room floor, humming to himself, safe and secure, in the knowledge that in this home, he will never be hurt as punishment, never be shamed for accidents, never be made to feel less than, precious and worthy of protection. The cycle stops here, with us. Sometimes family is not who you are born to, but who you choose to become. Sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to say no more. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately lead to the deepest healing. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect yourself or someone you love? What gave you the strength to do what was necessary, even when it was painful? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember to like this video, if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of resilience and healing, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to choose safety over family obligation. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you are never alone in your journey toward healing.